Hi, this is Mrs. Valent. I'm going to be going through the exercise 1.5, timber table, drawing that in isometric. Okay, so this one is actually a table that would be something that a Year 11 student might do in industrial technology. They do in their first assessment, they do construct, or actually in their second assessment, they construct a timber table. So this is just a example of the kind of thing that they might construct, and it's useful to be able to understand how you put projects like this together. And this is the kind of thing that you would have to communicate if you were going to be doing any kind of workshop or product building. Alright, so to start out, we're going to box in the whole shape. You might note that there is a slightly smaller shape for the legs. So I'm going to box in the legs in the first instance, and then I'm going to box in the top of the table in the second. So I'm going to crate in the legs first. Now there is no starting point for this, so I need to create a starting point. Again, like the previous drawings, it's always useful to sketch out how that might look. So if I was going to do the legs at the first, I'm going to do it in that kind of direction with the large side out that way, and then on top of that I'd need to place the top of the table. Okay, so that would end up going and being placed on the top of the legs. Alright, and the legs I need to remove out some of the inside there. Okay, so it's going to be something like this, just roughly. Okay, and it helps to do a quick sketch to visualize before we go in, because then we know that starting point is going to be that V, or that little crow's foot down in the corner there, and that's where I'm going to start. Alright, now this one, it's important to note, is a scale of 1 to 10. I'd never be able to fit a 1 to 1, not even a 1 to 2 or 1 to 5. This one is a 1 to 10 scale. That means that we're going to, every time I look at that measurement, I need to take off a 0. So instead of 600, it'll be 60. Instead of 490, it'll be 49. Okay, so that's how we convert from 1 to 1 scale to 1 to 10 scale. Right, now let's begin. Alright, so because I have, this is my starting point, I'm going to place it over here on my page, just slightly to the left of center. That might be a little too far, so I might even take that over a little bit. I might take it to here and do a crow's foot. Now I'm going to come off to the right and then to the left from that 0 point, just judging where is best to place that first initial upside down umbrella or crow's foot, and yeah, to allow for space for the other parts of my drawing. Okay, so you can see here that's these lines coming up out of here, and I'm going to be boxing in the legs and then popping the tabletop, which is slightly larger, on top of that. Okay, alright, so the width of the legs is 49 plus 3.5, which is 7. So 49 plus 7, which is 56. So the overall for this measurement across here is 56, and I'm going to measure and mark that out. So 56 is the total width for my legs, if we're going to 1 to 10. Now the other way is, these are squares, so again that will be, in total that will be 7, 3.5 and 3.5. I'm just moving the decimal place, and the inside width is 190, so that's 19 plus the 7. Okay, so it's 26. Alright, so we're going to mark out 26 out this direction. Now we try and pick a scale that's as big as possible, yet it will still fit on our sheet. And we do have to use the standard scales. We can't make up a 1 to 7 type scale. You have to use the standard scales of either 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. So if a 1 to 5 is not going to fit, which it wouldn't have, we have to jump straight to 1 to 10, which is what we're doing here. Okay, so I boxed in the ends of that, and that again is just the legs, right? Now I need the height of the legs. So here we've got this here of 578, but we're including the thickness of the tabletop. Now we've got a detailed view of the tabletop here, and it tells us that's 19. So it's actually 578 take away 19. Okay, and that will give us the height of the legs minus the tabletop. All right. So, excuse my maths. .559, which is a very weird number, but we're going to move the decimal place just inside there. So we're looking at about 56 mils in height. Okay, so let's mark that out. So 56 up here. So from that point to that point, it's 55.9, or let's just make it 56 to make life easier. Okay. We can put it just on the inside edge. So 56. And just putting it on slightly on the inside edge. I try and be as accurate as possible. Inside edge of that marking, that's what I'm talking about. So there is the height of the legs only. And then I'm going to push these out either side. That way. And that way. Okay. Now I'm just going to finish boxing this in. Reminder, this is the legs, so I'm not doing the top yet. It's always good just to box in that overall shape and then carve out the details afterwards. I'm not going to do an outline for this unless I've got a really nice fine outliner. Okay, like a 0.2 is good. 0.4 is starting to get a little bit too thick. Okay. Alright, we're going to be moving into the next part, which is creating the tabletop. Now we've boxed in where the legs are. Now one of the issues that's come up in looking at this drawing is that the width of the tabletop this way was not drawn onto the shape, onto the orthogonal, so it's actually 300. So the overall width you can see here is 600, so we're going to make that 60, and the other one is 300, so we'll make that 30. So it's 60 by 30 is that tabletop. Now, in doing this, what I'm going to do, because I need to sort of like average those points out, is I'm going to actually use this as my my top point. Yeah, and I need to sort of like create it from a middle out kind of sort of approach. I think would probably be the easiest. So if I look at what my middle is, so that was like 2.7. Yeah, what was it? So it was something very odd. Yeah, if I look at that, it was, yeah, as plus 7, so it's 26. So that was 26. Yeah. so half of 26 being 13. So on the top here, I'm going to mark 13 across, 13, and that will give me the middle. And I'm going to mark halfway across here, so if I recall it was 49 plus the 7, so it was 56. Yep, 56, so half of 56 is 27, so I'll go 27 is halfway there. Alright, so if I find my middle point for this top face, I can measure out from there. So I'm just going to really lightly, just a bit darker than that, create an X to find my middle point on my tabletop. Okay, so that's the middle point of my tabletop, and I'm going to box in the shape using that as my reference. So from here I need to create the 300th width across this way, so obviously being 30, it's going to be 15 out each way, so I'm going to line this up so that's at the 15 mil mark. So you can see there that's 15 at the center, which means I go sort of at the whole width is 30. Okay, so I can mark here and I can mark here, and that is the outer edges of my tabletop. Okay, so I'm going to pop those lines on, and this one on top as well. I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but to me this seems like a fairly straightforward approach. So I've got the tabletop width that way, and now I've got the length, which was 49, so actually no, that's not right, it was 600, sorry, the full width. So that's going to be, I'm going to line this up, so it's going to be half, so 600 is across the whole thing. Doesn't seem to want to be perfect, but I'm going to average it out. Okay, so I'm going to mark that there and that there. So there's my tabletop. Okay, so that's 600 across from there all the way across to there. Alright, so that is my table, the underside of the tabletop. Okay, now I need to actually add in a bit of height. So there's a height here, you can see that's 19. So I'm going to add that onto my tabletop. This is probably one of the harder drawings that you've done. So to add on a bit of height, going to just go and square up the ends. So I've got a bit of height there, coming up there, and I've got a little bit of height coming up there. I've already got the vertical here, coming up from here. Okay, so that's going to come up from there. We're not going to see the legs at the very top edge of the legs now. We've got to put the tabletop over the top of that. So obviously 19, moving the decimal place, it's 1.9, so we're looking at about 2 mils of thickness here. So 2 mils sits about there. Alright, and 2 mils right here sits about there. Now this is a very difficult one to do without all of the instruments, so it's probably one that we're going to leave until we get back to school. So that's going to come down there. Just going to come down there and square in the rest of it. It does actually come a bit higher, obviously, back here. and I probably need to do that a bit longer because I want it to be able to join when I do this other one back here. Making sure that T-squares are always sitting against the edge. So here we go, this one's coming back this way. Alright, so there's my tabletop. Now there's a lot of lines going on, so it probably looks a little bit confusing. So I might just clean up those lines that I won't be seeing. So if you sort of clean up the underneath points, you'll see that we've only got like the tabletop revealed here. Okay, so that's just the tabletop now. We'll get rid of the center point and so on. Okay, so there you go. So just make sure your corners are all neat. And we get rid of construction lines, so we're left with a clear design. Okay, so you can see the tabletop's there. It's clear, it's neat, it's fine. What we'll need to do is that underside piece, the strut, which actually keeps this element to the construction is very important because it gives extra support to the legs. Otherwise, the legs, it's kind of I don't know. It gives extra stability to the legs. Otherwise, there'd only be this small area, surface area joined onto this at a 90-degree angle. This gives this more stability. Sometimes you'll see them down here, but this is a lot neater, and it keeps it out of your way, and it stops the legs from wobbling, or eventually that join from loosening and breaking. Okay, so it is important to include that. I think we could probably do the legs first, and then from there. The next thing to add after doing the tabletop is the legs. So we're going to put in the legs. We could actually measure out and put in the crossbar now. Either way would be fine. Let's put in the legs. So the thickness of the legs is 35, so at 1 to 10 that's 3.5 mils. So we're talking about a fairly small amount. It's important to be accurate at this point. Okay, so you're going to have, otherwise you're going to have some fairly wonky looking legs. So 3.5 there, and down this way, making sure I line it up as well as I can. 3.5, and here as well, 3.5. And here, 3.5. Okay, so we're going to do some verticals from that point. Just to start filling in what the legs would look like. Now we're going to see two faces of the legs at each leg. It's not just going to be one face. The front corner, we're going to easily be able to see the two faces immediately. In the back corner, we're going to have to add some more information. So, making sure that I get this vertical, lining it up, 2.5. Keeping it light and construction line weight so I can remove what doesn't need to be there because I still need to do these lines. Now this is the second face to the leg, so the leg actually goes back in this direction as well. Okay, and now this one will go back in this direction. So as you can see, each one is going to have two faces, so we need to again measure out the 3.5 here and here. Adding those vertical lines. Now you can see those 3 legs there, and they look kind of 3D. It's going to be very important to do those accurately, otherwise they're going to look thicker on one side than the other, and they're not. They're meant to be rectangle, like a square profile. So now let's do that top crossbar. Okay, so across there, I need to do that crossbar. Now, this one I could have done earlier, probably would have been sensible, because I've happened to have rubbed out and gone over the top face, and so I could have come down that 59. What I can do is I can try and find the location of that top point again, and then come down that 59 again. So if I remember that height, that the overall height was 578, and then it was minus 19, so it was 56 from there to there. Okay, so if I measure up 56, or 55.9 if you want to be precise, so 56, that's where it was. Okay, so that is the point that and it's at the top corner of the table, it turns out, so it's just hiding under there. Okay, so we want to come down 59 or 5.9 at scale 1 to 10. So 5.9, or almost 6, so there's 6. So that point, I don't know how obvious my mark is in the drawing, but it is there well enough that I can see it, and light enough that I can remove it later. Now this bit is going to require a little bit of your own kind of thinking, because the line that's in between, it actually goes inside those legs. So we can see there, that leg will need to extend all the way to the top from there, and this leg. So those inside lines that we've created, so the lines that are closest. So as soon as we hit the leg, basically we stop. Oh, well, here and there you can see it just goes to the inside there. Right, now something similar happens on the other side, and you've got to imagine where that line comes from and to. So we can see the inside face of that leg, so lining it up with our point, it will go from that, and then it will stop at that point. So I'm just going to fill in those lines firmer so you can see the final result. I will have to do a bit of cleanup when it comes to these lines, and there are a lot of construction lines. This one goes all the way to the top here too. Make sure that goes all the way to the top. There we go. Alright, now I do have a back leg. So this is a little bit of a tricky one. I have a back leg, but because I've started erasing out my lines, I don't really have a point to go from. So probably shouldn't have been so quick to do that. Yeah, I can see that line that goes across there would have been from there to there, and this one, and this is the top face of my legs, so I really should have done this before I either rubbed out the top face of my legs or before I did the tabletop. Would have been much easier. Okay, so there's that point. So the legs are going to drop down. Let's just also run a line back here so we can see where that goes from and to. Okay, so the end of the leg, so it's going to be in there somewhere, and also there. Might also come from here. It's the back edge. And there. So that's the footprint of the leg. So you can see that little diamond is where the leg is going to end. So I'm going to, but I only see the front face of the leg, so I'm going to take that up until it hides itself behind there, which is that point. Okay. So there it is. There is my table. There's a lot of cleaning up to do. So just remove all my construction lines and I can firm it in. So it's nice and neat and clear. I think that's really important of your final drawing, is the clarity from which you communicate that final design. So just removing a lot of those construction lines that shouldn't be there. This one can go now for good. Unless it's a glass table, which it is not. That's it. That's all done.